So, hello my friends on YouTube. I am working with this small landscape and I'm gonna post a full video tutorial of the painting process, but I just made a 50-minute video where I listened to a short and beautiful documentary about the universe with Brian Cox, one of my absolute favorite scientists or spokesmen for science. You can see what it is.
Did our universe have a beginning?
Yeah.
Why is there a universe like this one?
Yeah.
If time began at the Big Bang, then...
Okay, it's called Brian Cox, Universe, Life of the Universe 1 and 2. There's 2 files and it's really brilliant. It's so lovely, it's so short and understandable and everything. So, if you like science and you like my paintings, you should listen to this series or watch it afterwards from the files. I will post a link to the file in comments. Now in both comments and description. And yeah, of course you're going to see me paint while I'm listening to it. And it's funny because I think science is probably what I appreciate more than art in some way, and it really makes me so happy listening to science stuff while I'm painting, because I also learn while I'm painting, and in a way it is like music. It calms me down and it gives me this flow. So if you're a painter and you want to learn at the same time as you paint, so find nice documentaries about everything and just listen while you are doing your job, and you can actually do two things at the same time. So knowledge is always good, and that's why I made this shorter video, so to force you to listen to how the universe works, and I hope you get something out of it. And with this, I will say as usual, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel if you already hasn't done that, and share my videos on social media. They're really helpful. And give it a thumbs up if you like it, even if you don't like it. So, with this, I beg you a fine farewell and see you again soon. There will be, as I said, a full tutorial of that small painting for the people who are interested in my longer videos. Okay.
Did our universe have a beginning? Why is there a universe like this one? If time began at the Big Bang, then was there a time before time? Why are there rivers and flows and filaments of galaxies? Is there an end of the universe? Is our universe eternal? I'm on tour in Australia, talking to audiences and scientists about 2 fundamental questions. How did the universe begin?
Like in the Big Bang, it feels audacious.
And how will it end?
Life on Earth will become very problematic.
In the last decade, we've been able to probe these ideas in unprecedented detail.
So this is the oldest light in the universe.
This is the story of our scientific quest to understand the origin of the universe. Of all the questions in science, the question of the origin of the universe is one that I think needs no motivation. Every human culture has its own creation story, and science is no different. For the best part of 100 years, we've had the theory that the universe began in the Big Bang. But in the last decade or so, new precision measurements of the cosmos, coupled with theoretical developments, have given us an unprecedented and detailed picture of the origin of the universe. If this were a lesson programme, we would start it in a deep voice going, "There was a time with no time. There was a place not in space. That is the time before time and place without space that we call the Big Bang." That's not what we're doing though. I think you can ask the question, why do you want to know the origins of the universe? I suppose the answer has to be curiosity. It's surely something that must occur to everybody at some point. Why do we exist?
When I think of a scientist, I think of an adult who still has the soul and curiosity of a child. So I think it's very natural to ask, how did it all get here?
Indigenous Australians have been observing the stars for more than 40,000 years, and like many ancient cultures, have a number of creation stories based on the night sky.
It's the story of Alang, the emu.
The emu sacrificed his wings and was given an eternal place in the southern skies.
Forever you will be seen running across the night sky and marked as Jura, the stars.
I've always liked creation stories. I like reading about them from across the world. Why do we do it? Why do we build telescopes to look back to the edge of time? Why do we measure the expansion rate of the universe and build theories to explain it? Well, the answer is because that's what we've always done. And the evidence for that is that every culture you study across the world has a creation story. And the most wonderful thing about living in the 21st century with modern science is that we also have a creation story. You've probably heard it described as the Big Bang. But what is the Big Bang? And what do we know about the origin of the universe?
With the observations and mathematical theorizing, we have a good sense that about 13.8 billion years ago, the universe was incredibly dense and it was incredibly hot.
Hot! Give me some heat, give me some density, give me some violations of the laws of particle physics.
It underwent a rapid swelling that's called the Big Bang.
So what's the Big Bang? And the answer is, I don't know what the Big Bang is. I just know what came after the Big Bang, where we have a universe that's expanding very quickly. It's really hot. These things we do know. It's the things that come after that we understand.
You can trace everything back and you get to a point where the universe had to have been hot and small and dense, and something happened that made that expand, right? And so that's this idea that became known as the hot Big Bang.
I'm liking the Big Bang. That just feels right. It feels audacious.
It's common to think of the Big Bang as the start of time itself. The moment when everything came from nothing. But there are cosmologists who think there may be more to it. That the thing we used to call the Big Bang was an event in a pre-existing universe, and not the beginning at all. But how can we be so confident? How can we even dare to speak of things that happened almost 14 billion years ago? In 1927, the astronomer Edwin Hubble noticed that the light from distant galaxies is stretched. That means that space is expanding, our universe is expanding. So you run time backwards in your mind's eye, that means that in the past, the distances between the galaxies were smaller, and you can imagine a time when the distances were so small that everything is effectively on top of each other. That implies that our universe had a beginning. There was a day without a yesterday. And that is what we call the Big Bang.
More than 30 years after Hubble made his observations, cosmologists remained divided about whether the Big Bang theory was correct. More evidence was needed, and it came in the 1960s with the discovery of a mysterious faint signal. We call it the cosmic microwave background radiation. It's seen as a faint glow, coming literally from everywhere in the sky, and not being emitted from any particular star, galaxy, or object.
So this is the oldest light in the universe. There are photons that have travelled 13.8 billion years from over there, and 13.8 billion years from over there, and they're carrying information about the beginning of time.
One of the many remarkable things about the cosmic microwave background is the story of its discovery, because it was found entirely by accident.
We had this result, we couldn't find any explanation for it, we couldn't make it go away. What were we going to do with this thing?
So where did the cosmic microwave background come from? And why do we consider it such strong evidence for the Big Bang theory?
So the picture is this. The universe is expanding and cooling. In the first few minutes, it's extremely hot. And then the universe is filled by what's called a plasma. So it's too hot for atoms to form. 380,000 years after the Big Bang, it's cool enough for atoms to form. The universe becomes almost instantly transparent, so light can travel in straight lines, and it will continue to travel in straight lines for the rest of the expansion history of the universe, and it can enter our telescopes here on Earth 13.8 billion years later.
The cosmic microwave background is considered such strong evidence, in large part because the Big Bang theory predicted that it should exist.
It was first observed in the mid-1960s, and it's only then, really, just before I was born, that the idea that the universe began at a hot, dense origin really took hold. It's an almost overwhelming piece of evidence because you're seeing the afterglow of that earliest of times. We can take pictures of that light in great detail now. We just don't see it as a hum. We can photograph essentially the universe as it was, the whole sky, looking out into the universe and see it as it was when that first light was released.
This remarkable baby photograph of the universe confirmed that we had the basics right, but its great detail presented fresh challenges. As we often find with science, when you answer one set of questions, new ones arise.
This idea that the universe had a beginning in the Big Bang is, in some ways, unsatisfactory. It raises a series of childlike questions. Like, if the universe had a beginning, then what happened before the beginning? What caused it? If time emerged at the Big Bang, then was there a time before time? How can the universe appear spontaneously out of nothing at all? Was there a before? Well, that is a philosophical question, unless you can come up with a theory that predicts something that you can test against observation.
The clues which point the way to a theory of what came before the Big Bang can be found in problems with the Big Bang theory itself.
Now, there are two problems with the standard Big Bang model. They're called the horizon problem and the flatness problem. You can picture the horizon problem as follows. If you look at the universe, as far as the eye can see, in that direction, which is to say, cosmic microwave background, then it's the same temperature, so 1 part in 100,000 as the universe as far as the eye can see in that direction, which is the cosmic microwave background. But those 2 points on the sky are separated today by 90 billion light years. That means if you've got a universe that's been expanding sedately and is only 13.8 billion years old, those 2 points could never have been in contact with each other. Which means there's no explanation for how they could be so precisely the same. And then there's the flatness problem. When you look at our universe, it appears to be completely flat, which seems very strange because it could have been curved like the surface of a sphere, or curved like the surface of a salmon. A solution can be found in a theory known as inflation, which suggests that there was a time in the history of the universe when the universe wasn't just expanding sedately, as it is today. It was expanding incredibly fast. By fast, I mean that it was doubling in size every 10 to the minus 37 seconds. That's 1/10 million millionths of a second. Why does that solve the horizon and flatness problems? Well, first of all, it suggests the universe has to be extremely big, way bigger than the piece we can see today. That means that it's always going to look flat. Think about an analogy with the surface of the Earth. This little piece of the Earth here looks flat, even though we know the Earth's curved. Why? Because it's very small compared to the size of the Earth. So it is, according to the theory of inflation, for our universe. It also solves our horizon problem, because it says that that piece of the sky, which is so far away from that piece, were once in contact with each other. They could jiggle around and get to the same temperature, but then they were ripped apart. It's mind-boggling, but it's important to say that if we are right about inflation, then this violent, rapid expansion must have occurred before the thing we used to call the Big Bang. So, what is our current theory? This theory called inflation that says there was something going on before that, I suppose that thing we used to call the Big Bang, or is that...
Yeah, the hot Big Bang. I make that distinction by saying hot Big Bang versus Big Bang, because hot Big Bang does imply sort of the universe is in a fireball kind of state.
Yeah.
I mean, and the reason we know that something happened before is we can look at that primordial fireball state. Like, we can actually see it, because we can see the cosmic microwave background, which is the sort of afterglow of that time when the whole universe was hot and dense. The sort of important point there is that it was expanding so fast that things that were connected to each other before, close enough together to communicate, to come into equilibrium, to be the same temperature, rapidly come out of contact.
Yeah.
And so that's why now when we look at the sky and we see that two different parts of the universe that should never have been in contact with each other are the same temperature, it's because you can dial back the expansion and find that they were never in contact, but then there's this extra secret time at the beginning where they did communicate, and then they just were sort of pulled apart so quickly that you know, we can only infer that happened by the fact that they must have been in contact at some point.
So inflation leads to a massive universe, galaxies way beyond the horizon, way beyond the part that we can see, it possibly infinite in extent. And that's one of the things inflation does. So it tells us that the universe should be significantly bigger than the patch we can see.
We're going to probably just slow down this class and going home. It's really more expanding stuff. Do you understand it all?
I wouldn't say I understood it all.
Excellent, very good show, yes.
Do you understand it all?
No.
I'm so confused.
After entertaining the people of Canberra, I made my way to Tidbin Villa, just outside the capital. It's home to one of the most important deep space tracking stations on Earth, and it's a must-see for an astronomy geek like me.
I always find these places exciting if you're a space geek. You look out here, that big dish you can see, is the only dish in the world that can talk to Voyager 2. So that iconic spacecraft, I've followed that since 1977, since I was 9 years old. We're still in contact with it now. Beyond the edge of the solar system, it's a tiny transmitter, about 16 watts of power. And that dish is the way that we talk to Voyager. And in the background is a famous dish. It's called honeysuckle. That dish is the Apollo dish. So when you hear Apollo 11 on the moon and you hear the last words of NASA as Apollo 13 came back into the atmosphere, the last contact as it re-entered, and the last words you hear is lost contact at honeysuckle. And that dish through the trees is that dish.
Okay, LOS in a minute or a minute and a half.
It's exciting.
And welcome home. Thank you.
It's all very well said that the universe underwent a period of rapid expansion sometime before the Big Bang. But we need some kind of mechanism that might cause that to happen. And we have one, off the shelf, if you like, in particle physics. It's a thing called a scalar field. You can picture it as a sort of still ocean filling space. We call it the inflaton field.
The thing about that type of field is we know it had to go away at some point, or else the universe would still be exponentially expanding.
If you have an energy that is uniformly spread out through a region of space, it can yield a new kind of gravity, repulsive gravity. Gravity doesn't pull things together, but pushes things apart. So they presuppose that this kind of fuel, if you would, called the inflaton field, but it's like a fuel that generates this repulsive gravity, is what drove the universe to start expanding in the first place.
The idea that inflation is driven by the inflaton field leads to one of the most remarkable predictions in the history of cosmology, which is supported by observation.
Now, you can think of the inflaton field as a sort of a still ocean filling space, but quantum theory tells us there's no such thing as a still ocean. Every ocean has ripples in it. Now, what do those ripples correspond to? They mean that the inflaton field is a little bit bigger in some regions than others. So that means that at the end of inflation, at the start of the Big Bang, some bits of the universe will have expanded a little bit more than others, and they will be a little less dense than the others. So at the Big Bang, you get a very natural prediction that some regions of the universe are slightly denser than other regions of the universe. Now imagine what happens as this universe expands and cools. Those denser regions get denser, and eventually they collapse to form the galaxies, stars, the fluctuations in the early universe led to the structures that we see today, including, of course, us. Without those seeds, without that structure, we wouldn't exist.
Although inflationary cosmology does have its critics, this idea that the universe underwent a violent expansion before the hot Big Bang is now accepted by many cosmologists. But a more speculative addition to the theory exists, and it opens the doors to an intriguing possibility. Ours may not be the only universe.
If the theory of inflation is correct, then you could ask the question, how long was inflation going on for before the Big Bang? And the answer is, we don't know. We have a minimum time, which is quite short actually, 10 to the minus 35 seconds or so. But it could have been much longer than that. And so you ask the question, could it have been going on for an indefinite period of time? Could you push the origin of the universe back and back and back into the infinite past? So we have an eternal universe. The answer is we don't know. There's theoretical speculation either way. But imagine if the universe is, in fact, eternal. There may not have been a beginning.
So this picture of inflation, those are two ways of looking at it. There's one that this universe is all there is and it inflates and then slows down and there we are. But there are other possibilities, aren't there?
Yeah, for sure. And the other possibilities suggest that we're one of a grand collection of universes. We're part of a multiverse. And again, it's not an idea that comes out of wild theorizing. It comes right from the math. You see, when you try to explain how the universe, say our universe, got started, and you have this repulsive gravity coming from the inflaton field, it causes space to expand. But the math shows that it's such an efficient process that you can virtually never fully use up the fuel that generated our expansion. So our Big Bang happens, but there's still some fuel left over. What does it do? It can generate another Big Bang. So you get this wonderful process of Big Bang after Big Bang after Big Bang, yielding universe after universe after universe. And that's just this natural outcome of trying to explain the Big Bang in our universe. You're naturally led to the possibility that it simply is not a one-time event.
Well, here's Earth, and we would think it's special because we happen to be pretty close to it. Then you realize, oh, it's one of 8 planets. But our sun, no, it's one of 100 billion other suns. Galaxy, no, it's one of 100 billion galaxies. The universe, well, is it just going to stop there and we have only one universe? The trend line tells us, why shouldn't there be multiple universes?
If you look out onto this universe, the one in which we live, and you ask the question, could it have been any different? What would it have looked like if gravity was a bit stronger, or there's a little more dark energy, or the force of electromagnetism was a little bit weaker? Very quickly you get to a universe which would not permit life to exist. So it's a legitimate question to ask, are we lucky? But in theories that allow you to have multiple universes, such as the inflationary multiverse, then it can be the case that the different bubble universes have different laws of physics. And it can be the case that the mechanism that produces those universes provides a very natural way of exploring the landscape of the laws of physics. So that then means that we're not lucky at all. Our existence is inevitable because every possible universe, with every possible combination of physical constants and dark energy and masses of the particles, every one exists. And not only that, but every one of those is being created essentially an infinite number of times and will go on being created into the indefinite future. And that is the inflationary multiverse. So it says our existence is inevitable. How does that make you feel?
We may never know if our existence is inevitable. We may never have a complete theory of the origin of the universe. But it is remarkable that we've made so much progress.
Big Bang, as we see it, was created in a very special way. The present understanding is that inflation can do that. So that's what I would hang my hat on right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are changes in the future in our understanding.
One day, some smart person come along and solve it for you. That's the beautiful thing of how science works.
The set of questions we're asking now get us to a new vista, a new place to stand. And a new place to stand, there are other questions we haven't even dreamt of yet that I'm sure will be more important than whatever we think we're answering today.
I think cosmology is the most remarkable of the sciences. I mean, not only are we able to look up into the sky and collect the light from the most distant galaxies, and even in the form of the cosmic microwave background from close to the origin of the universe itself, but we're able to decode the messages that it contains and build plausible theories of the origin of the universe. Yeah, I think our situation was beautifully summed up by the Belgian priest and mathematician Georges Lemaitre, one of the fathers of the Big Bang Theory. He said, standing on a well-cooled cinder, you see the slow fading of the suns, and try to recall the vanished brilliance of the origin of the worlds. We all get used to the idea that we live finite lives. And perhaps that's because we imagine we can leave a legacy of children, grandchildren, great works. But will that legacy be eternal? Can you imagine taking the great achievements of our civilization and chiseling them into granite and leaving them as a record into the far future? Or do the laws of nature conspire to make that impossible? Will all trace of our civilization one day vanish? What will be our fate? And what is the ultimate fate of the universe?
I'm going to investigate the theories that cosmologists have put forward for the end of days.
There is a law of physics called the second law of thermodynamics, and to paraphrase it, it means that on a global scale, so across the universe, things can only get worse. So things tend to get more disordered, things tend to decay away. I was once involved in putting forward the opposite proposition, things can only get better, but that is a gross violation of the second law of thermodynamics, so really shouldn't have been allowed even in the song there. I think actually songwriters should pay more attention to fundamental physics.
The first stars in our universe began to shine around 100 million years after the Big Bang. But it was another 9 billion years before our star, the Sun, formed. But our Sun won't live forever, which will obviously have a direct impact on all life on Earth.
The Sun is about halfway through the phase where it's burning hydrogen. It's making helium, it's got what we call the solar luminosity, it's putting out that much heat and light, but that is going to be slowly increasing.
And presumably at some point, we would find it extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. In about 1.1 billion years, it will have got to 10% brighter than it is now. That is enough to create what's called a moist greenhouse. So life on Earth will become very problematic at that stage. 3.5 billion years from now, it'll be 1.4 times its current luminosity. And that's enough to evaporate the oceans. So that's getting fairly severe at that stage. It's really got another 5 billion years to go that it can keep on burning hydrogen, but it will become uncomfortable for us well before that.
The destiny of stars like our Sun is to run out of fuel and collapse.
The core compresses, but the rest of the star expands enormously, and we have a red giant. So we enter this red giant phase.
When our Sun becomes a red giant and it begins to swell and engulf the orbit of Mercury, it's going to start getting very hot on Earth. We're going to need ways to terraform Mars and then ship billions of people to Mars, because Mars will be cooler than Earth, it being 1.5 times farther away.
The Earth will basically get fried at that point. We won't be able to exist, hopefully, if humans are still around in some form or another. We've moved off to better locales.
So the ultimate fate of our star, the Sun, is to be this cooling ember.
That's the ultimate fate of the Sun.
So, in just over 1 billion years, this place will become uninhabitable. In 6 or 7 billion years, the Sun will be gone. But that, of course, isn't the end for the universe. The matter that floats out from our dying sun will relapse into other stars, other planets, and perhaps other living things. But that process can't go on forever. There comes a point in the life of the universe when the constant recycling, births of new stars, has to stop.
So what is the fate of the universe? How will it all end? Cosmologists have thought about this for a long time, and many have come to the conclusion that the end will come in more of a whimper than a bang. It's known as the heat death, and it begins with a decrease in the rate of star formation. Looking up into the southern sky allows us to see a hint of this process.
So, you do get a sense of the amount of gas and stuff out there, don't you? You always hear this wonderful phrase, stellar nurseries. So is that really accurate, that you really do have these places where all the action is concentrated?
Absolutely. In order to form stars, you have to put together a lot of material, and so you naturally pop off a lot of stars in that particular area.
I can't start looking.
Fortunately, we have very powerful telescopes to see all the way across the galaxy so that we can pick out stars in all kinds of stages of their formation process, from when they just start collapsing to when they really kick on and turn into full-blown stars.
Stars form from collapsing clouds of gas and dust, and the leftover material forms into planets and moons and asteroids and comets. But in our part of the Milky Way, this construction process is slowing down. Is this a glimpse of the beginning of the end?
We see that around the sort of solar neighborhood, around where the sun lives, that there's about half as much star formation as there was 10 billion years ago.
Why is that?
Once you form a star, it dies, and it holds some of its matter together in a black hole or a white dwarf or a neutron star, and you've locked that gas up forever, and it never goes back to being a star again. So in order to keep forming stars, you've got to keep bringing gas in from somewhere else.
So the fact that the rate is dropping, so it's a factor of 2 from the 10 billion years ago to now, implies, of course, that sometime in the future that's going to stop. So when is that?
It's a long time, not during our lifetimes. I think if you do the extrapolation, you go out 100 billion years or something more than that. It's a long time away, and eventually we will run out of gas to form new stars in every single galaxy, and gradually, the universe will die away.
So what will our descendants actually see when they look up into the night sky in a few billion years' time?
Well, the centre of the galaxy is heat, isn't it?
It's kind of the empty bit of sky up here, Sagittarius.
Peer into the centre of the Milky Way, and like virtually all other galaxies, you'll find a supermassive black hole. Ours is around 4 million times the mass of the Sun. We don't know how these supermassive black holes form, but we do know about smaller stellar mass black holes.
And when the centre of those stars are more massive than about 2 or 3 times the mass of our Sun, they actually collapse into a singularity, is the theory. And the space-time around them bends completely on itself, so nothing, the gravitational pull is so strong, nothing even light can't escape.
So then we're left, I suppose, with a dark sky, but a sky full of black holes. And what, fading stellar remnants?
Yeah, fading stellar remnants, things like faintly glowing cores of long dead stars, billions or even trillions of years in the future. And these are glowing so faintly we can't even see them. Now, black holes do radiate very, very faintly, but we won't actually be able to see that because they'll all be too far apart.
You get the sense, I suppose, when you talk about that, this starry sky we take for granted, although perhaps we don't, perhaps the most beautiful thing, but it's a temporary
phenomenon?
It's actually a very short-term phenomenon, isn't it? We're only nearly 14 billion years into the universe's history.
So in the far, far future, hundreds of billions of years' time, we could still stand somewhere and look out into the night sky. We would see just blackness. There would be no hints at all to tell us about the past glorious history of our universe. But is this the whole picture? Science has a habit of opening up new possibilities, often when you least expect them. We've known our universe is expanding since the 1920s, and we thought the expansion rate was slowing down. Then, in the late 1990s, it was discovered that the expansion rate of our universe is actually speeding up. Nobel Prize winner Brian Schmidt was as surprised as anyone by his discovery.
1998, we went through and we measured that the universe wasn't slowing down at all. It was speeding up. And that was, well, it looked to me like a big mistake, and that I had somehow wasted 3.5 years of my life getting some nonsensical answer. We knew that Einstein had invented something called dark energy or cosmological constant, which makes gravity push rather than pull, but that seemed pretty crazy. That was sort of Einstein's bad idea.
If the universe continues to expand forever, and indeed continues to accelerate in its expansion, then in the far future, you end up with a universe that's just a sea of photons being stretched by the expansion of space, cooling down to the same temperature. So you end up with a universe where there is no structure, there's no possibility of storing any information or processing any information, no possibility of consciousness or life, no structures at all, and that sea of cooling photons will last forever.
The idea that there is a mysterious thing called dark energy, which drives the accelerating expansion of our universe forever, is the standard model of cosmology. But it's not the only theory about how our universe could end. The heat death, this idea of the universe just gradually grinds to a halt and carries on expanding forever, is a bit miserable. But the physics of the far future is not very well understood. So there are, in fact, other, and I think, more exciting possibilities.
So, like the Robert Frost poem, it seems like things will end in ice, not in fire. But there's a big caution here, which is we don't really understand dark energy very well. And so this is really only one of a couple of possibilities.
Cosmologists have come up with an even more devastating idea called phantom dark energy, which eventually leads to the universe ripping itself apart.
If the universe has this dark energy, this stuff causes gravity to push from itself.
This is another really great way to destroy the universe.
So as the universe gets bigger, this stuff dominates the universe more and more because it's part of space itself. You make more space, you have more dark energy, which makes dark energy stronger over the other forms of gravity.
Over time, this phantom dark energy would start to pull apart bound orbits. So first it would pull apart the galaxy, stars would start to wander off because it's still increasing. It'll start to break up all structure, all matter. And then at some point, the entire universe will be torn asunder in some sense. It's called the Big Rip.
To reach the breaking point, literally, and the fabric of the universe starts to tear a hole. The laws of the universe and the boundaries of the universe just start going haywire.
So that's the Big Rip.
So that's a big rip. I mean, that's one of the theories, right? There's the Big Rip and the Big Freeze. I love the Big Rip because who doesn't like a universe ripping, right?
The Big Rip idea can be combined with a theory we have describing the beginning of our universe, known as inflation, which describes a time before the hot Big Bang, when our universe was expanding extremely rapidly.
So inflation,
that's right,
that rapid expansion before the Big Bang, could be envisaged as being the end of the previous universe that's undergoing a big rip.
Exactly. It's, you know, you have these big questions, but when you look at it fundamentally, if you have a universe that grows quickly through dark energy, which rips, that would mimic pretty similar to what we think it happened in inflation. And we are pretty confident we know inflation had to happen in some form to get the universe that we see today. So it's not crazy to think that these two things are related. We don't have the evidence for it yet, but it's not the worst idea we've had.
We said that inflation stops, the Big Bang happens. But what if inflation doesn't stop all at once? It just stops in patches. So then our Big Bang would just be a little event in an ever-inflating space. And there'll be other patches that stop, and you get a universe. Other patches that stop, and you get a universe. And that process could go on forever. So although our universe dies, other universes are constantly being created. This is called the inflationary multiverse.
So you get this wonderful process of Big Bang after Big Bang after Big Bang, yielding universe after universe after universe.
How is a picture that? How is a picture our universe riding on the back of some kind of potentiality of expanding space-time?
You can. I've got a more down-to-earth way, which is, think of a big piece of Swiss cheese, big block of Swiss cheese, right? Each of the openings is like a universe. And the cheese itself is the inflaton field driving the ever-accelerated expansion of the universe. And as this cheese expands, more and more pockets open up inside, more and more universes are created. And our universe is simply one opening in the block of Swiss cheese. That's all that we are.
The idea of the multiverse is tricky to get your head around.
This is where we're cream of the crop.
But I'm hoping a glass of Aussie Shiraz will enhance my powers of analogy.
I'm tempted to draw the analogy with inflationary cosmology and say that each one of these is like a different universe with different physical laws. Each barrel in this warehouse is taken from a different part of the vineyard, so each barrel is a different expression through the grapes of the landscape. So in that analogy, our universe would be just one barrel of Shiraz Viognier, in this case, amongst a whole possible warehouse of barrels, different expressions of possibilities. A good analogy, not too forced.
Physicists refer to each different possibility as a different vacuum. And this opens up the chance that we could be instantly annihilated.
My favorite way to destroy the universe is vacuum decay, which is a really fun idea and one that's gotten really popular lately because of things that we're seeing at the Large Hadron Collider.
The Large Hadron Collider at CERN on the French-Swiss border is the largest scientific machine in the world. In 2012, the Higgs boson was discovered here. But its properties suggest that our universe could be in an unstable, false vacuum state.
There is some true vacuum somewhere, and we could maybe tunnel into it at any moment. Just destroy it.
By any moment, you probably...
I mean, it's unlikely.
You're a cosmologist.
Yeah.
If you're still watching this, it hasn't happened yet.
The timescale for vacuum decay is many times the age of our universe, so it's not going to happen tomorrow. But it's still disconcerting to think that our universe isn't the stable, eternal home we once believed it to be.
You might think, well, quantum mechanics, could it save us? Could there be a little fluctuation that allows something to happen and reboot part or all of the universe? You never know, but probably not.
Whether it's vacuum decay, a big rip, or a sad, slow heat death over the next 10 to the 1,000 years, now is the time to explore our universe while it's still visible to us.
We live in a special time in the universe's history. Actually, the time when the universe is young enough that we can look out into the night sky and see billions of galaxies. The galaxies are not receding away from us fast enough that they outrun the light.
So our descendants, when they look out into deep space, will see black, inky, dark stillness. And they'll think that this little collection of galaxies that are all bound together gravitationally nearby, they'll think that's it. And that's a wrong picture of the universe, but nevertheless, that's the picture which our descendants are going to naturally be led to through their own observations.
The future astronomers in 2 and 4 and 6 billion years will think we're crazy because they can't see the evidence that we have.
I think actually it was Brian Greene who said to us that cosmology essentially becomes a religion.
That's right, yeah.
All you've got is history books telling you about the oldest light in the universe.
That's right. You can't go and reproduce the experiment. We would just have to believe someone else's word, and then what do we do?
Who are we to think? Who are we to say that we have a complete record of the universe to draw from? What chapters of our book of the universe have been removed before we even acquired the book?
The fascinating thing about the far future in an accelerating, expanding universe is that you get to a point where you can't do cosmology anymore. There's no such science as cosmology. You couldn't deduce from what you see that you live in an expanding universe that had an origin at some point in the past. So cosmology becomes a subject that is only accessible through ancient books and not accessible through the things you can see. So in that sense, I think that the future of the universe is sad, because your ability to gather knowledge about the universe as it was in its past disappears. How will the universe end?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You know, it's very difficult to make predictions about the fate of the universe when there's 95% we don't understand.
We should just make a documentary called I Don't Know.
Galaxies are forming and stars are exploding, and you know, we're seeing evidence of things happening in the Big Bang, and the universe is expanding ever faster, and we're just sitting here drinking our tea.
I've had the good fortune to share my enthusiasm for physics and the cosmos with Australian audiences curious to contemplate the nature of our universe.
Absolutely tremendous.
Oh, he takes us on a great journey, I think.
Did you understand it all?
Not all of it, but yeah, bits and pieces of it, yes.
I love the fact that when I finish work after a really hard day, I can come to something like this and you can make me feel really insignificant compared to the rest of the universe.
And I've met scientists under a truly inspiring southern night sky who share that curiosity and desire to know more.
I suppose there are two ways of looking at the future of the universe. You might feel depressed that although the universe will almost certainly exist forever, we certainly won't. There will come a time in the future when it's not possible for any life to exist. Or you might feel fortunate. You might feel fortunate that we live in a time when we can look out into the night sky and see the light from distant stars and galaxies, and from the very origin of time itself, and understand how our universe began.
and make predictions about how it might end.